Hi, I'm Maddie Kropp, Director of Annual Giving at Wyoming Seminary.
Hi, I'm Liz Clemens-Cadle, Director of Alumni Programs at Wyoming Seminary, and welcome to a new episode of
Sem Connects
Virtually.
This week, we will be chatting with three well-known gentlemen who have experienced the highs and lows in the history of Wyoming Seminary.
We hope you enjoy.
Thank you all so much for joining us.
We're going to start by introducing our three panelists today. We have Jack Idom, Jay Harvey, and John Schaefer. Thank you again for joining us. Can we start by each of you just explaining to us your relationship with SEM, your history with SEM? And we could start with Mr. Idom.
Oh my goodness, I get to go first.
Yeah.
That's very nice. Well, I came to Wyoming Seminary in 1969 and have served here almost ever since that time. And has been a really wonderful time. I came as the Dean of Admission and served with that title for most of the time that I've been here. There was probably about a 20-year span there where I was challenged or charged to develop an international and summer program for the school, and to spend a good deal of time on that and building the international population of the school as we know it today. Began to move toward retirement about 7 or 8 years ago, and came off the payroll about 4 years ago, and now I'm kind of the amateur volunteer archivist of SEM.
Thank you. Mr. Harvey?
I started Wyoming Seminary at Payne Pettibone in nursery and kindergarten, and from there went through the day school at that time. Graduated from the upper school in 1980. Came back to teach in 84 and have held various roles. Been in the classroom the whole time, but served as activities director at the upper school, coached 2 or 3 different sports, and served as the dean of the upper school for 8 years. And now I'm back in primarily the math classroom with a little history full time.
Great. And Mr. Schaefer?
Well, like Jay, I started at the day school, though I didn't start until first grade. So went through the day school and then finished the upper school in 1971 and came back to work in 75 after graduating from college. I had the honor and pleasure of working with Jack Idom for the first 4 years of my career as the assistant in the admission office, and then for 2 years with Jack Meeks as the associate director of development in the alumni development office. And then when he retired, I became the director of development then in 1981, I believe it was, and have been the senior person in the office since then. My title now is Vice President of Advancement.
Thank you.
Over the course of its 175 years, Wyoming Seminary has faced many challenges. The fire in 1853, wars, floods, recessions, and yet despite all of these events, the institution is still standing. If we talked about every challenge a school has ever faced, this would be an incredibly long interview. So Mr. Idom, can you speak to what it was like working at SEM during the flood of 1972?
I sure can. They were interesting days, for sure. I was a rather young administrator at the time. Those days were filled with ups and downs and some pretty significant low points and some pretty significant high points as well, for sure. At the beginning, while the waters were rising, obviously there was great apprehension and concern, fear of the unknown, the uncertainty that we were facing as a school. None of us who were on the administrative staff or faculty at that time, except maybe for some of the real old-timers of faculty, had gone through anything like this, and let alone to be thinking about trying to safeguard the security of an institution that's about 100 years old at that point. As a small administrative staff, we met probably about every 2 hours as the waters were rising, just to organize teams of people to go out and carry furniture upstairs, equipment upstairs, safeguard documents and files, and do that kind of thing. Make sure that faculty families who are still living on campus on June 23rd, 1972, to make sure that they were safe and getting off the campus and out of the way. Obviously, while we were all apprehensive and scared and fearful, the adrenaline was moving at that point as we were trying to move things up. The most significant thing that many of us spent time on was trying to safeguard the library, which at that point was in the basement of Sprague Hall. And obviously we wanted to get almost 15 or 20,000 books out of the basement and up to the first floor. Unfortunately, the first floor of Sprague Hall was flooded as well. So the vast majority of the library was lost at that point. Jim Kersey and I were the last to leave the campus as the water arrived on campus. It was an eerie feeling. We walked around the dining room, Fleck dining room, with water at our hips and out on the back campus with water chest high at that point. We left by boat, and obviously that was a really, truly eerie feeling to leave by boat and to look across the back campus where the fence had disappeared below the surface of the water. And as we walked, we sailed by the football field and the intersection of Schuyler Avenue and Pringle Street. We actually ducked under and around the street light because the water had risen to that height. So, and I remember clearly going by rowboat past our first floor apartment in an apartment that we lived in on Maple Avenue with the water very clearly, several inches, if not more than a foot, on the floor there. And then 2 days later, coming back to the campus, there was just such a feeling of devastation, and it was overwhelming, the widespread devastation that we felt. The waters had struck the basements and first floor of every single solitary building. We walked into the gym. We couldn't get the gym doors open because they were swollen shut. But when we pried them open and got to go in, it looked like, it's hard to describe, but the floor was very uneven. It had buckled in some places where it looked like splinters casting into the air. And in other places, it almost looked like sand dunes alongside the ocean that were very uneven and smooth along the way. But they had swollen and crowned and was very, very uneven. Obviously, the library tables and the dining room tables had all toppled over. And so, you can imagine walking around the campus that you had come to be very familiar with and was quite well ordered before, and then find out that such devastation had taken place. Then obviously this all has, as I'm thinking about it, it comes back in phases. We then had to move into a cleanup phase, and the feeling at that point was one of almost hopelessness because of the devastation that had taken place. It was really pretty significant. I remember looking down Sprague Avenue and seeing mountains of books that had been piled out there from the library, waiting for payloaders run by the National Guard to come in and scoop them up and take them away to landfills. I remember grand pianos being turned on their side and taken out of the first floor of the chapel, which was a music conservatory at that point, and just slammed down the steps and often into the sidewalk. Then, as time went on, things did begin to turn around, and there was hope in the air. We could begin to dream a little bit and see what could come of this in the future. Members of the Board of Trustees were incredibly committed at that point. Dr. Stetler and Frank Henry, Dick Pearsall, and Joe Bittenbender and Hardin Kuhn, and obviously Frank Carlucci were all exceptionally courageous people and forward-thinking people that helped to pull things back together. Their attitudes were contagious. And so all of us began to feel the promise of a new school that would be emerging. And the alumni and the faculty were committed to volunteerism throughout that whole thing. And that was uplifting. We had armies of volunteers from the alumni and faculty crews and the older student crew as well. And eventually, funding became apparent, both through philanthropy and our benefactors, and some through the government. And so it was a joy to be a part of that evolving of a new institution that came about, for sure. So there were ups and downs, but there were certainly some high points. Yes, the enrollment did suffer, obviously. We had no electricity and no telephones to be in contact with our prospective students or candidates at that point. I remember running a long electrical cord from Dr. Schaefer's home across the driveway into the admission office so that our one single Selectric typewriter could be operated to get some communication out to the family.
Wow.
Compared to the current boarding enrollment of 185 students, we had in the September of 72, 73 boarding students. So you can see that the economy of the school was certainly significantly impacted at that point. So anyway, you asked what it was like to be at Sem during that time, and I was a young, somewhat naive administrator at the time. And it was inspiring to watch and to learn from those who were much more seasoned men and women of the day and who remembered the flood of 1936 and who had dealt in their own lives with the ups and downs of their lives and were veterans of, were veteran in their careers for sure. So it was an awesome time for me personally and definitely filled with those ups and downs.
Well, it's nice to hear about the hope that you all were able to maintain even during a time that was really difficult, especially with what we're going through now. So thank you for sharing that story. John, you often mention, especially to our office, the recession of 2008 and what a difficult time that was for the school. Can you speak to how the school was able to get through that difficult time, and do you see similarities? Obviously, it's a very different reason why the economy, fell then, but do you see similarities between what we're going through now and what you went through then, as far as fundraising and just, the school in general?
Sure. I'm not sure there's anything quite like what the world is going through today with the combination health crisis and fiscal crisis, but it was interesting back in 08, 09, because in 07, Jerry Packard had retired as president after being there for 17 years, and Kip Nygren had just come on board as president. And a year into his tenure, we had the recession and the fiscal crisis and all kinds of dollar challenges, and we were in a capital campaign. We were 2-3 years into a capital campaign at that point. But the resilience, some of the same people that Jack just spoke about were still very much involved as benefactors. And with the upset of the stock market, in the end, it took us, we had to add an extra 1.5 years onto the capital campaign because people just needed a little more time to do things. It wasn't that they didn't want to support the school. They just needed to get their own financial house in order. And as we moved through that process, it actually ended up becoming the most successful capital campaign in the school's history. And for a whole variety of reasons, the fiscal crisis, the change in school presidents, and some major leadership changes on the board of trustees, what had started out to be a 5-year campaign actually ended up being a 10-year campaign. But that's the campaign that ended up bringing the new Kirby Center, the renovated Nesbitt Stadium, all the classroom work at the upper and lower school, the new Lowell Tennis Center, Klasner Field. So it was resilience, it was leadership, it was the board of trustees committing to finish the project. And if it was going to take a little bit longer, that was okay. It was just important for us to do it right and to do it well. And the results, I think, speak for themselves. And so if there's a lesson there for today, things may not happen as quickly as we would like them to, but I think through grit, through dogged determination, and I hope it's not too long before we get to that inspiring hope that Jack was talking about. It would be very nice for all of us to be on the other side, so to speak.
Thank you.
Jay, you've been teaching at Sem for some time now. and you're facing an obstacle unlike any other in school's history, which is to move to virtual learning. In your opinion, how do you think this will shape or impact the future of the school?
Well, I remember, as we transitioned into this, the first couple of weeks in, I saw an article on, on some website about will the ability for teachers to deliver a product online effectively shutter a lot of the ways education is done moving forward. And I think I can honestly tell you, as a seminary alum, parent of 3 alums, and now on the faculty, that we are missing the way that we deliver education. There's no question. The personal contact, the ability to have those one-on-one, conversations, which you can do virtually, but it's just, there's no body language read. I mean, we just can't, we can't see our classes, and we can't identify those individuals that are kind of struggling and sort of keep them after class. It's just become very difficult to do that. So I think what this will do coming out of this, it'll make us really appreciate the type of education that I think we valued at seminary for 175 plus years. That one-on-one contact, that trying to lift, everybody up, either in groups or one at a time or in small groups. I think we miss each other. I think, as we transition into this, we did it in the typical faculty way. We leaned on each other. We leaned on each other. Somebody was good at Zoom. Somebody was good at Google Classroom. Somebody was good at something else. And everybody sort of had a piece of the puzzle. Nobody had all the answers. And I'm sure we don't have all the answers yet, but, I think for 175 years, faculty members at Wyoming Seminary have learned more from each other than we've ever learned from a book or any kind of story that people have told us. I think we've just, have a great collegiality. I know the other day I drove down Maple Ave, and the Mosleskis were out on their porch, and I stopped and, got out of my car and had a 15, 20-minute conversation. And my daughter was in the car with me when I got back in the car. I mean, that was one of the first sort of face-to-face conversations, other than this way, that I'd had with colleagues in a month. And I just reflected for a second. It was good for my soul. And I think those conversations that we value so much in the way we educate kids just proves to me that what we do on a pretty regular basis, except for the past 7 or 8 weeks, is really the magic. And, I think we're all missing that. I think this just validates that. And when we all are able to come back again, I think so many of us will just so appreciate even the bad days that we have with, colleagues and students, those rough days when things just don't seem to be going right. I think we'll just so value the fact that we can all gather in one space and figure it out together. So I think we're here for the long haul, because I think our parents are missing us as well.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the parents of elementary school students. My daughter is an elementary school teacher in Tampa, and she's been home teaching, and I can only imagine what the kids on the other side of the screen and their parents are going through at that level. So, again, to circle back to Jack's hope, I mean, we'll be here for a long time doing it the way we do it best. By leaning on each other and by trying to help kids one-on-one, not across a video screen, although I think we've managed to pull this off about as well as could be expected.
Absolutely.
I love that answer.
Mm-hmm.
So as Maddie mentioned earlier, the school has been through a lot in the past 175 years. Can one or all of you speak to what makes Wyoming Seminary so resilient?
Well, I'll go first. I think what's come across and what each of us has said, if you boil it down to one word, it's people. And, it's the people, it's the SEM community, it's the SEM way. I think if you look in the area where I work, if you look in philanthropy and, all those challenges that we agreed we weren't going to talk about, the world wars and the pandemic of 1918 and fires and floods and all that, we have just been incredibly fortunate as a school to have the right people at the right time leading the institution, an incredibly dedicated, talented faculty, and then benefactors who've always stood up and always seemingly at the right time. When you think at the start of the school with what William Swetland and Payne Pettibone did to, to help the school, and then all of a sudden you need a science building, and the Nesbitt family provides the funding for that. And well, we need a new athletic field, and the Nesbitt family steps up again. And what the Kirby family has done for a century in support of this school is remarkable. And in the late 50s, Walter Carpenter, it was time to have a real gym, and stepped up. And Jack talked so poignantly about the flood, and he was actually at our family home for dinner that evening because my dad couldn't believe the water was ever going to get above the basement level. But coming out of that horrible event, the new learning center, the new student center, the Buckingham Performing Arts Center at that time, the family that is Wyoming Seminary stepped up and made all those things possible. So I think if you were to ask each of us individually and collectively what's kept us at Wyoming Seminary for way too many years to add up, it's the people. It's the people. We thrive on our contacts, and and Jay obviously with the internal group, maybe more, but he knows so many alums, and I've had the pleasure of traveling the country, visiting with alums, keeping them connected, and in my case, working with them for 4.5 decades, and Jack had the same experience. So it's the people. We'll get through this one. We've gotten through a lot of challenges. I said in a faculty gathering that was amazing on Zoom with 100+ people this morning, this may be the greatest challenge that we've ever faced in the school's history, but I am confident that we'll get through it. And what's going to get us through it? People.
I think that one of the things that, we just came off of our 175th anniversary, and I think, it gave a lot of us a chance, to reflect back on a lot of people that did a lot of things beforehand. And, quite frankly, I think we owe it to them to continue to get through these things in the best way we can. I mean, we owe it to Dr. Stetler, we owe it to, all those colleagues that came before that went through all these different events and found a way through to keep this school thriving and successful. We stand on their shoulders, and I think it's that those roots and that history, whatever way you define Wyoming Seminary. Some people just have a small little 1 or 2 year shot, and that's their definition of the school. Some of us, that's a little longer than that. But I think we owe it, to find ways through these things, because all those people before us, built the school that we have today, that we love, and that, again, the 3 of us have all put kids through, and now 2 are putting grandkids through. I'm not there yet, but but my family goes pretty deeply back into the history of this school as well, and I can't imagine failing any of those people. I can't imagine being part of the generation that did not move this school forward through whatever nature or the economy or anything threw in its path. So, I think there's a great resolve on so many people's part to make sure that this dream, this vision, stays alive and thrives.
And I would say that as we look over all of the things that have threatened the school through the years, and there are many, but I think we have to recognize that resilience is the tradition of Wyoming Seminary, and it starts way back at the very beginning. After that first fire in 1853 that took the entire school down, it was William Swetland who looked at the ruins and said, it does not look as well today as it looked yesterday, but money can make it better. And then it was Reuben Nelson, who looked at the ruins and was committed to education at that particular era of time and said, we must keep school. And that phrase, keeping school, is a part of the tradition that that is indeed Wyoming Seminary. So it's a tradition, I think, of loyalty and support, commitment to learning, commitment of the faculty, commitment of the trustees, and the commitment of alumni and the community leaders here that sustains us all. We're a valley of immigrants. We have a heritage that has taught us to struggle and to persevere and to make it through the hardships of time. And we're hardworking, and we overcome the hurdles that confront us along the way. And so that's our tradition.
Well, I have to say that hearing the three of you talk, there is hope and inspiration now within me that I didn't have earlier today. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us.
Our pleasure. We're just grateful that Jack didn't cry during the whole thing.
That was truly remarkable. The wealth of history that the three of them have of Wyoming Seminary is in itself just a gold mine. And to hear them talk about the people and just Wyoming Seminary as a whole, to be an alum, to be an employee, to be part of the community, I feel so blessed. I feel so fortunate that I was given the experience to go there. I'm gonna cry again. But it just, they're right. The people really make a difference. And I do feel inspired and hopeful about the future because of the community. And to be honest, if I was to be working anywhere, I'm glad I'm working at Sem, where they're trying to make everything as normal as can be. And it really does feel normal.
I 100% agree. And it's a really difficult time to feel hopeful, just to be blunt about it. It's really hard to feel like, when is this going to, when are we going to get back to normalcy? But we are so lucky to work in a place where they put us first. They put the faculty, they put the staff first, and we rely on each other. It's about people. Absolutely. It's the bottom line for Wyoming Seminary's people. It's our students, it's our alumni, it's our faculty, it's our staff. And that's what makes it such a special place. And just having those three, that really gave me hope. And I hope it gave everyone watching this hope as well, that we will get through this and be okay. And
to hear Mr. Idom say the school's built on resilience, he's right. It is.
Absolutely.
And I think that as teachers, they instilled that in all of us as faculty, as students, and
right.
And as faculty, they instill it in us too. So
absolutely,
it's really, it was needed. It was a nice break from, talking about everything that's going on and hearing you can move forward and you can rebuild.
And we will.
We absolutely will. We'll be better.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining us. And like I said before, I hope that this really, to me, felt like a really special episode. I hope that this filled you all with a little hope and just a little bit of joy to help you get through these difficult times.
Stay home and stay safe.